Okay, so welcome to this webinar. My name is Irene. I'll be your moderator for the day. I hope you can all hear me clearly and loudly. I can see people from all over the world. Thank you so much for joining us. You can just chat to us on the chat section and tell us where you're calling from, where you're joining us from. I can see people from South Africa, Malawi, India, Nairobi, and all over. Thank you so much for joining us. We are having a webinar on an introduction to monitoring and evaluation. This is not the first webinar that we've had. We have had subsequent webinars on different topics. So thank you so much for joining us. Those joining us for the first time and those who have been with us through the journey, thank you so much. So this webinar has been organized courtesy of Capacity Africa in partnership with Strategia Netherlands. So I just want to tell you a little bit about Capacity Africa, then I'll let my colleague from Strategia Netherlands to talk a little about the Institute before we begin the training. Yeah, so basically Capacity Africa is a humanitarian and development training provider in Africa. We offer courses from certificate, diploma, and even postgraduate diploma courses. We also offer trainings to corporate and humanitarian agencies and even individuals. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you're interested in a training. So we have over 200 courses and we have partnered with various institutions across Africa. And we thought that it is very wise to maybe have just a little bit introduction to monitoring and evaluation. I know most of us probably are practicing, maybe are program managers, whether you are new to M&E, I think this is going to be very beneficial to all of us because we all know how important it is to track implementation and output systematically. That is if you're handling a program or a project. So thank you so much for joining us. Remember, if you're interested in any of these courses, don't hesitate to visit our website, that is capacityafrica.com. And we remember we're offering this training and courses in partnership with Strategia Netherlands based in Netherlands. So at this point, let me ask my colleague, Debbie. Debbie, if you can hear me, you can just tell us a little about Strategia Netherlands, and then we can just dive into the training. So remember, as Debbie is coming in, just write to us on the chat section where you're calling in from, the country you're calling in from, so that we get to know more about you. So thank you so much, Debbie. Debbie, are you there?
Hi, Irene. Yes, I am here. Can everybody hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so goedemiddag allemaal. Good day to everybody. I'm just going to do a quick presentation. Otherwise, if I start talking, I might just go on for too long, and we've got a mission here. I'm trying to share my screen, online resources. Yeah, am I good? I hope everybody can hear me. Irene?
Yes, I can hear you and we are seeing your screen.
Perfect, thank you so much. So some of you know, some of you may not know.
Debbie, we lost you. Hello, Debbie, we lost you. Okay, I think my colleague is having challenges with the internet. So as she's preparing, maybe come back. Like I said, we are going to have a training on the introduction to monitoring and evaluation, the basic concepts and the importance of maybe studying monitoring and evaluation. So our facilitator for the day, or our trainer, is Stephen Mushami. He's a consultant and he's going to introduce himself. I know he's hearing me. Stephen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Irene, and I hope you can hear me as well.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
So I think we can just begin the training, then Debbie will come in after.
Okay, that's fine. So just give me some few minutes. I just get my screen on. Just a short moment.
All right.
Okay, so thank you, Irene, and thank you also my colleagues also at Strategia for helping us be able to start off this particular session, where we basically just want to be able to see if we can actually be able to share a few more things regarding what we have for today, and that's basically what we would want to be able to get into, so that we can actually be able to see how we can be able to look at some of the things that we actually have for the day. So let me just be able to pin my screen to you. Okay, so yeah, so we just look at a number of things. We just want to see if we can be able to look at introduction to M&E terms and concepts. I know some of us might be quite well familiar with some of these things, and it is good to make sure that we are able to we are actually able to look at some of these things where we can actually be able to understand some of these terms, because you will not be able to undertake monitoring and evaluation very well if you don't have a very good understanding of some of these terms and concepts that we actually use in monitoring and evaluation. And then the other thing also is also to be able to look at the difference between monitoring and evaluation. Like, for instance, do we know what we talk about when you talk about monitoring? And do we also know what we talk about when you talk about evaluation? So it becomes very, very important to make sure that we can be able to understand some of these concepts quite clearly. And again, also, it is also important to basically be able to look at the need for monitoring and evaluation in development projects. And that's something that we will be able to highlight. And of course, I'm sure most of us understand that monitoring and evaluation is very, very critical for development projects, and not just development projects, but also for humanitarian projects as well. But that's something that we will also want to be able to clarify and highlight as much as possible. Then again, also we'll be looking at the process for monitoring in the process of the project life cycle. And that's something that we want to see, why monitoring is so important for the process of the project life cycle. Then again, we will be able to look at the different types of indicators and how you can actually be able to identify some of the outcome indicators that you will actually be able to use in a project. And so it will be very, very important to make sure that we are able to highlight that as much as possible. Now, the other thing also that will be important is also to understand what is an M&E framework, because a couple of times people are not very, very sure about what we actually mean when you talk about the M&E framework. And also a couple of times also people have a lot of confusion between the M&E framework and the M&E plan. And it is important that we get the difference quite clearly. And that's something that we may want to be able to mention so that it comes out very clearly for us to be able to understand it as much as possible. Then again, also we will be looking at the logical framework. And this is just a type of an M&E framework, because we have different types of frameworks that we actually use, and the logical framework approach is one of the frameworks that we actually use quite a lot of the times, and becomes very critical to be able to use the M&E framework a lot of the time. So be looking at the details towards that. What are some of the critical things that you should be able to take into consideration when you think about the logical framework? Then also we'll also be wanting to look at how to be able to write an effective M&E report, and that's something that we will actually also need to be able to understand so that we can ensure that we are able to always have an effective M&E report done, and also trying to check on the communication of the M&E findings for action and accountability. That's also something that would be able to love to be able to work on, and ensure that we are able to ensure that we can always be able to communicate M&E findings so that there is action and accountability. So basically, that's what we want to be able to look at today. And hopefully, at the end of that, we can also be able to pick some of your questions, some of your feedback, and basically just be able to see how the session has been able to improve your capability in this area of monitoring and evaluation. So that's what we will be able to be looking at today. And we want to make sure that everybody is able to benefit from this particular session as much as possible. Yeah, so as Irene said, my name is Stephen Mushan, and I'll be taking you through, I'll be the moderator for the session, just to take you through some of these components that we are emphasizing are very critical when you're considering monitoring and evaluation. So thank you all for joining us, and we want to be able to have a very great learning session for today. So we'll just go right into it, and maybe just be able to look at this and see how much we can be able to cover into this. And I think we can do this in about maybe in about 1 hour to 1.5 hours, and then we'll also be able to have some 30 minutes of question and answer, so that we can be able to clarify some of the things that you may want to ask, and also pick some of the comments that you might want to be able to get from this particular session. Now, so let me just start from the very beginning, where we just want to be able to look at some of the critical terms and concepts in M&E, and that's what we're calling Introduction to M&E terms and concepts. And it is important to make sure that we are actually able to look at that. And one of the things that we want to start by defining is simply to be able to ask ourselves, what is monitoring? And as most of you know, when you talk about monitoring, we're simply talking about the continual and systematic collection of data. That's what we basically mean when we talk about yes, so it's very, very important to make sure that we are able to understand that as much as possible. So this is where you continuously collect data that can actually be able to provide information about the project progress as much as possible. And that's what we are able to refer to as monitoring. And again, beyond just talking about monitoring, the other critical question is to be able to understand what is evaluation. When you talk about evaluation, what exactly do we mean when you talk about evaluation? And of course, when you talk about evaluation, we're talking about the periodic and the systematic assessment of the project design, the project implementation, the project results for an ongoing or a completed project. And simply this evaluation definitely seeks to be able to answer the evaluation criteria, and more details will actually be able to follow on that. So we're basically talking about the periodic and the systematic assessment of the project design, of the project implementation, and of the project results that are there for an ongoing or for a completed project as expected. And evaluation, anytime you want to be able to conduct an evaluation, we're simply trying to be able to answer simply some evaluation criteria components. And I know most of us would be very, very familiar with the evaluation criteria components. Maybe let me see if some of us can be able to remember. Somebody who can be able to remember, if you can raise your hand, I should be able to see you. If you're able to raise your hand, I should be able to see you. And just mention some of the criteria, some of the evaluation criteria components that you are familiar about. And yes, I have Amos Luquia. You want to be able to answer that. Let me hear from Amos Liquia. You want to be able to answer that. You can unmute and mention some of those evaluation criteria components. Amos?
The one I'm familiar with. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay, thanks. The one I'm familiar with is the DAC criteria, DSC.
Yes, 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 the DSC criteria.
Yes, which looks at efficiency, effectiveness,
okay,
sustainability,
effectiveness, yeah,
impact,
sustainability,
and reliability. Yes.
Okay, and relevance,
and relevancy, yes.
no reliability, yeah,
Sorry,
relevance. Yeah, so that's very, very good to be able to hear that from Amos there, familiar with some of the evaluation criteria components that really become important anytime you want to be able to undertake an evaluation. And maybe just let me see if someone else can remember. There is one of the evaluation criteria components that was just added some while ago. It never used to be there, but currently it's becoming something that we are looking at. And it was just recently added. And I'm trying to see if someone can be able. So if you can raise your hand, if you know one of those ones that was simply added recently. Let me hear from Betty. Betty is connected as well. I can see your hand is raised. If you can unmute.
Thank you, Stephen. Coherence.
Thank you. Very well. Coherence is one of the evaluation criteria components that was just added recently from the DAC criteria, that is Development Assistance Committee, that basically looks at some of the standards to be able to put in place for evaluation of development projects. And so it's very, very good to be able to hear that. And I'll just be looking into that in a short while. That's why I'm saying I will be able to have some more details about this later on. But basically, just to be able to define evaluation, we cannot define evaluation without mentioning the DAC evaluation criteria components, because they become very important components anytime you want to be able to evaluate the project. Then again, also, we also talking about what is MIL. I know most of you have come across this. Earlier on, we used to talk a lot about M&E, but nowadays you will also be able to hear some terms such as MIL, which is basically an extension of monitoring and evaluation to include the components of accountability and learning, which are also critical components for any development project that you want to be able to be engaged in. And so, so therefore it becomes important also to make sure that we are able to understand the component of MIL as well. And so MIL basically processes that help us strengthen the accountability, also help us strengthen the learning, so that we can be able to promote the project or program portfolio. I just want to say, make sure you are very, very cautious on actually being able to press the annotate button. So be very, very cautious. Immaculate, I can see you went there, and please make sure that you can be able to avoid that as much as possible. So so it's very, very good to make sure that we don't mess with that button as much as possible. Okay, so we were saying, therefore, MIL processes will be able to help us strengthen accountability and learning, and also to make sure that we promote project, program, and portfolio effectiveness. It's either you're dealing with a project, it's either you're dealing with a program, or it's either you are dealing with a portfolio as much as possible. So it's always good. And let's avoid also this challenge that most monitoring and evaluation professionals have, where, and I've come across that challenge a lot of the times, where people are never able to differentiate the difference between a project and a program. And let's avoid that as much as possible, because a program cannot be equated to a project. There's always a difference between a project, a program, and again, a portfolio. And I just want to see as well, somebody who can be able to remember the difference, the primary difference between a project and a program. I just want to see whether there's somebody who is familiar with that. I know somebody should be familiar with that, or somebody can try to see the difference between a project and a program, because there's a lot of confusion there among monitoring and evaluation professionals between being able to recognize the difference between a project and a program. And it's always good to make sure that we can actually be able to see that particular difference. So let's see someone who can be able to explain this to us. And I can see I have Abdirahim Ibrahim Mohammed. You want to unmute and give it a try?
Yes, Stephen, thank you. And nice to meet you again. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well, Abdirahim.
Thank you. This is Abdirahim from Somalia. I'm delighted to take part of this course, and I'm part of the other M&E, which goes from the Strategia Netherlands. Let me try this, the difference between
a project and a program.
Project, program. Okay, a project is an activity that was undertaken one time, whatever, and it's something expected, something to deliverable. And a program is the number of projects. When the projects are more than 3, 4, something like that, we call them a program. So a program is a number of projects, and a portfolio is a number of programs, is a portfolio. That's my understanding. Thank you.
Okay. Quite excellent. And I can see a lot of people had shown interest to be able to differentiate that. And I think I appreciate that concept that is coming from Abdirahim, just to be able to see that difference between a project, a program, and a portfolio. And that hierarchy goes in that direction, where you will actually be able to see a project as a temporary endeavor or a temporary intervention that has some clear set of deliverables or objectives to be achieved at the end of a particular time period. And that is what we refer to a project. So let's avoid that confusion for always referring to a project as a program, because there's always that challenge. A lot of the times when I'm going to do evaluation assignments, you realize that a lot of development staff are not able to see the difference, and that really becomes very, very important for us to be able to make sure that we are able to see that particular differences as much as possible. So thank you for that, and thank you for being able to bring about that particular difference, and that really becomes very, very important for us to make sure that we are quite clear with that. Now, when you talk about accountability, because we are just trying to define this terminology, mean. And we said it has added components of accountability and learning. And so what is accountability and what is learning? So when you talk about accountability, we're simply referring to the commitment to transparently respond to the needs of all stakeholders. That is, you're able to respond to the needs of the beneficiaries. You're also able to respond to the needs of the donors, and you're also able to respond to the needs of the partners and also the project organization regarding project activities. And so that really becomes very, very important. So the commitment to be able to transparently respond to the needs of all stakeholders, that's beneficiary, donors, partners, project organization, regarding project activities that you actually have. So that really becomes very, very important to be able to consider. And then again, also the other component is learning, where learning, we talk about being able to have processes in place and a culture that is able to enable intentional reflection with the aim of learning, so that you're able to make smarter future decisions. And that's what learning is all about. So ensuring that we are able to have quite a number of processes in place and a culture that will allow us to always intentionally reflect on what is happening, as we are able to put certain activities for every intervention that we will always have in a project. And that really becomes quite critical to make sure that we can actually be able to do that as much as possible. So that's what we are able to look at when we talk about learning and also accountability. Now, as I said, I was going to review the DAC evaluation criteria components as a summary, and this is what now we have as the DAC evaluation criteria components. We used to have 5, as I mentioned earlier, and so we used to have relevance, effectiveness, efficiency, impact, and sustainability. And recently, I think just 1 year ago, the DAC committee was able to provide the coherence component as something also that we are able to ensure that we are able to review. And that basically means that now we don't just look at is the relevance, which basically means whether the intervention rights, which is something you want always to check when you're evaluating. And again, also the issue of effectiveness, that is your intervention being able to achieve its objectives? And also the issue of impact, and that is you're trying to look at what difference will your intervention be able to make. Then again, also the other thing is also efficiency. That is how well will your resources be used. And again, also sustainability in terms of will the benefits last the project period. And that's something that you always want to know for every project, whether the benefits of that particular project will actually be able to last that particular project period. So there we talk about sustainability. And so again, the other thing is coherence. And coherence here, we are trying to look at how is this intervention fitting in the context in which you operate. So we want you to be able to make some comparisons around other interventions and see how does it fit within the context of where this project was actually implemented. So coherence also becomes a critical component to be able to look at. So that becomes very, very important to make sure that we can actually be able to achieve that as well. So those are the DAC evaluation criteria components. And again, also, one of the things that we need to understand about promoting accountability in a project, what are some of the things that you can actually be able to do? Number of things that we can actually be able to do. One of the things is to make sure that we are able transparent communications, and that's something that we always need to be able to do. Then secondly is also to make sure that the project is basically aligned with the standards. That is, has the donor given you some standards that you need to be able to achieve while you're implementing, ensuring that your project is able to be in compliance with those agreed donor requirements. Again, also we embrace accountability, ensuring that we are responsive, that is, we are able to establish channels through which stakeholders will be able to voice their feedback, also voice their ideas, their suggestions and complaints, and also ensure that we are able to commit to be able to provide response on how their input is also going to be able to inform project decisions as well. Then again, also participation. So one of the ways to make sure that there is very, very good implementation, so very good accountability is to ensure that you allow participation into the project. That is, allowing the contribution of the different stakeholders in a project to make sure that they are able to participate in terms of initiating, defining the parameters, and also conducting the meal activities as expected. And beyond accountability, also, how can projects also embrace learning? So there are a few things that become very, very important as well in ensuring that a project can be able to embrace learning. And one of the things that we can always be able to cultivate to make sure that learning is actually able to work in a project is by ensuring that we are able to incentivize learning, and again also ensuring that we can actually be able to encourage a spirit of curiosity. It's also something that we are able to do. Then again also, if we can be able to embed learning processes also becomes very, very important to make sure that we can embed learning processes. Again also, ensuring that we are able to promote adaptive management also becomes very, very important. That is ensuring that we can analyze monitoring and evaluation data promptly and frequently by actively seeking to understand project data and also using evidence to inform decisions and adjustments to project design and implementation. So that really becomes quite critical to consider. And then again also, we can also ensure we embrace learning by promoting the sharing of information. That is, we are able to use project learning to make sure that we are able to organizational and sectoral best practices as much as possible. So that really becomes very, very important in ensuring that we can actually be able to promote learning in a particular project. Now, again, also, I think it's also good that I mentioned that monitoring and evaluation has certain results levels, and it is important to make sure that we are able to introduce ourselves to some of those results levels that are there in a project. And it's very, very important for us to be able to understand some of those levels of results levels. And I know most of us are familiar with this. The first thing that we normally consider is being able to look at the inputs. So one of the critical things that we always want to be able to consider in an intervention is like what will be the critical inputs that we actually need in a particular project. So the inputs will simply be able to refer to the resources that are actually invested in a project or program. For example, is it technical assistance? Again, is it computers, mosquito nets, or training? Those are some of the common inputs that we find in most of the projects. After you have your inputs, then the next thing is to be able to define your activities, or rather, some people will call that processes. That is, what are the activities that will actually lead you to your key results for the project? And so we are able to look at some of the activities, and this basically simply refers to the activities or the tasks that you will actually be able to carry out so that you can be able to achieve the project or program objectives. Then thirdly, is the outputs. And when you talk about the outputs, here we're talking about what are some of the immediate results that you'll actually be able to achieve at the project or program level by executing activities. And that really becomes very, very important to be able to look. And then again, also from outputs, then you're able to go to outcomes, and outcomes here we are referring to a set of short-term or intermediate results at the population level that are basically achieved by the project or program through the execution of activities as expected. So that's what we will be able to refer to as outcomes. And then again, also from outcomes, we also go into impacts, and impacts simply mean what are some of the long-term effects or end results of the project or program. For example, are you able to see the changes in the health status, such as the mortality, such as the morbidity, such as the fertility? It also becomes important to be able to look at that. So what are some of the long-term effects or end results of the project or program? And they also become very, very important to be able to look at it. Just to make sure that we have a good understanding of exactly what we are talking about. I basically have a diagram there just to be able to show you specific examples of what we mean with those results levels. And I think that arrow is able to show you how one thing is able to lead to the other. That is how inputs are able to lead to activities, and how activities are able to lead to outputs, and how outputs are able to lead to outcomes, and how outcomes are actually also able to lead to the impact, because the impact becomes the long-term results that we expect out of a particular intervention that we are actually doing in some of our projects that we implement in our organization. So, so when you look at the inputs, some of the critical inputs that would actually be there would be things like, you know, you have staff, you have space, you have training materials. If it is you're planning to be able to conduct some training in one way or the other, and the activities that will actually be able to come in here will be thinking about how to conduct training events for providers. Those will be the activities, and then from these activities, they will actually be able to lead you to outputs. That is, the providers will actually end up being trained in new clinical techniques. And from the outputs, we actually are able to get to the outcomes. That is, a good outcome is that once you train your providers in new clinical techniques, we expect that there will be an increase in the number of clients that are basically served by the newly trained providers, which is a critical outcome and a good indicator for trying to measure whether the outcome has actually been achieved. And we'll be coming into indicators later on, just to clarify what exactly we mean with that. And once you have your outcome, the next thing that you actually get is your impact. So the outcomes are able to lead you to the impacts, and here we are able to see some declining morbidity levels in target population, and that is something that we always are very, very keen to measure whether there is a decline in disease morbidity levels in the target population as much as possible, and that really becomes very, very important to be able to look at. So impact is becomes a very, very important thing to make sure that we are able to look at that as much as possible. So so it's important to make sure that we can look at the impact as much as possible. Now, the other thing is looking at the difference between monitoring and evaluation. And it's very, very important to be able to look at monitoring and evaluation. That is, what is the specific difference when you talk about monitoring and evaluation. And one of the things that I would actually want to be able to see is what are some of those critical things that differentiate monitoring and evaluation as much as possible. Now, one, we said monitoring is always ongoing and continuous, and this is very, very different from evaluation, because evaluation is periodic assessment. So it's not something we do on a regular basis or in a continuous basis in a particular project. It's something that we actually assess at certain periods, maybe at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter or at halfway through the project or basically at the end of the project, like what to do, the end term evaluations that we normally do. This is very, very different from monitoring, because monitoring has to be done continuously as the project basically continues. Then again, another thing that we also find about monitoring is that monitoring basically is able to focus on activities and outputs. So you realize that we are able to just look at activity and outputs only, whereas evaluation basically focuses on outcomes and impacts. A lot of the times it is able to look at the outcomes and impacts. And that's what we are able to measure when we look at evaluation. Again, also when it comes to monitoring, we basically focus on comparing what is being delivered against what was actually planned to be delivered. And that's something that we actually need to be able to see when you talk about evaluation, that is compare what is being delivered against what was actually planned. And then again, also, when you look at evaluation, we are also trying to focus on project achievements, that is the positive, the negative, and also the intended or unintended, and the recommendations and the lessons learned. That's what we are trying to target. And then finally, another key difference between monitoring and evaluation is that we find that monitoring is usually done internally, and that's something that we are able to see, whereas evaluation is usually done externally, that is by an independent outsider. So monitoring will actually be conducted internally, and most of the times evaluations are normally considered good to be conducted externally, maybe through an independent outsider as much as possible. So it's good to be able to see the difference between monitoring and evaluation in that particular regard as much as possible. Now, having been able to look and clarify the difference between monitoring and evaluation, then I think it's also good to be able to bring out this discussion about the need for M&E in development projects as much as possible. And one of the reasons why we are able to see the importance of undertaking monitoring and evaluation in development projects is that it is basically able to provide us systematically ways of systematically measuring and assessing program activities and results, so that we can check on the progress of implementations and results systematically. And that's why in every project, we have to be concerned about the whole issue of do we have a way to systematically measure the results that we need to be able to achieve in a project. And that's why every donor will always have a systematic way of ensuring that it is able to measure the results of the implementation as much as it can be possible. Then again, also, it is also good to make sure that we are able to determine when a program is going to plan and what changes may actually be needed. And so it becomes also important to make sure that we have M&E in place, so that when we are planning, then we can be able to have a way to be able to determine when changes will actually be needed in case we are not achieving the results that we anticipate. And then again, it also becomes a basis for modification of interventions and also for assessing the quality of the project activities that are being conducted. And it's always very good. That's why we need to have M&E in place, so that if there's a possibility for modifying some of the interventions that we actually have, we can be able to do that modification of those interventions. And then again, it also provides the necessary data that allows us to be able to guide planning, to be able to allocate resources, and also to be able to design and implement programs and projects, and if necessary, to make sure that we are able to reallocate resources in better ways as much as possible. So it's always good to allow us to ensure that we have a way to allocate our resources so that as we design and implement programs and projects, then we can be able to see whether there is need to reallocate resources in better ways. Again, also, it is also able to provide planners and also implementers, and also policymakers and also donors with the information and understanding that they actually need to be able to make informed decisions about the operation of their programs and projects as expected. So it is very, very good to make sure that therefore we can be able to insist on the importance of monitoring and evaluation as well. Now, the other thing that I just want also to emphasize, and it's like something that I would just want to be able to magnify, is to be able to talk about monitoring and why monitoring really becomes a very critical component in the whole process of the project cycle. And maybe I just want to be able to start with a comment there. Somebody who can be able to tell me, why do you think we are insisting on the whole importance of monitoring when it comes to the project cycle? That is, every project will always be able to start with initiation, the conceptualization, planning, implementation or execution, monitoring and evaluation and closure. And why are we saying monitoring is a critical process as part of the project cycle? So if somebody can be able to raise their hand, I think I want to hear what are some of your opinions or comments regarding why we are saying monitoring is this critical in the project cycle. So we need to be able to emphasize that. So I can see some hands raised, and let me start with Harun before I come to Thu. So Harun, can you be able to mention
Thank you.
why you think monitoring is very, very critical?
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Yeah, proceed,
Harun
Harun.
Okello. I'm Harun Okello, attending from Uganda, and I'm so happy to be on this platform. Well, I think monitoring is pivotal, and when you look at the project cycle, it is located exactly in the middle. So in monitoring, it is used to gather information, and it is a basis to provide a check on whether the project is progressing on. And so if it is not progressing on, you can use that information to go back to the planning phase, to the initiation phase. And then if things are going on well, after doing your monitoring, then you can proceed and go with the implementation appropriately. Thank you. I submit.
Okay, thank you, Harun. And that's a very good comment. That basically we want also to be able to establish whether the project is actually proceeding on well, so that we see whether do we need to go back in the project cycle and put some things in order. And you will not be able to do that if you're not continually continually assessing what you are actually doing. You will not have a basis to be able to know whether it's time to go back. The cycle instead of going ahead with the cycle. So it becomes very, very important to make sure that we are able to recognize that as much as possible. So it's good to note that. And let me also hear some other comment. Kethu, you're there. You wanted to make some comment. Okay, did you raise a hand by mistake? I'm not able to hear you. I think Kethu may not have wanted to comment. Let me check on someone else here. Let me see if I can hear from.
I have some comment. I have some comment because I have incidentally muted. Sorry, my microphone. I'm from the Southeast Asia region, and particularly in Myanmar, Burma. So I'm very, very curious about your lesson. Yeah, one of my college is attending in your college, your university in the Netherlands. Okay, what I would like to know is about the difference between monitoring and evaluation. I'm okay with the previous comments. Yeah, more or less the same. To me, what I think is we need to do M&E about accountability. Without M&E, we cannot achieve accountability. And that is why the M&E is critical in the project life cycle management. What I would like to be more curious about that is in your comparison between monitoring and evaluations. I'm a little bit, I'm thinking, what would be the role of the evaluation standard in the evaluation? I did not see your comparison, what the coherence, relevance, efficiency. So you mentioned that monitoring is a regular process and evaluation is a periodical.
Okay. Okay, so I think I've gotten your comment. You want to exactly understand what are some of the role of the evaluation standards. And I think it's a question that I would be able to address. Can you hold on? And I will be able to come to that question as during the question comments, feedback, because I will be handling all different kind of. So I'll go to start with that. Just clarify what is that specific role for monitoring and evaluation, so that I can be very, very clear. But I asked a very specific question, and I wanted just so that we don't mix up the topics. I just wanted to be able to hear from the audience in terms of the monitoring process, the importance of the monitoring process in the project cycle. So I think if we can just first of all deliberate on that. I have noted your question on that, and I will respond on that while we're giving the final comments and question and answer session, just to specifically respond to you on that. So can we be able to hear somebody who wanted to share something about the monitoring process? Lizzie, you wanted to say something? Are you able to unmute? I think if you can be able to check on how to be able to mute your microphone, you can be able to unmute, and then you will be able to make your comment on the question that I was asking. So I think we are not able to get Lizzie, but I think I can see we have Moses Okure. Moses Okure, you want to make a comment on that and on just what I've been able to inquire? Moses Okure, are you able to? Okay.
No.
Now okay. So Moses, hold on. I can see Lizzie is on. So let's hear Lizzie and then we hear Moses. So Lizzie, you can come in.
Okay, sir.
Good morning, everyone. I am Lizzie Tumel from Botswana. With the monitoring in the project cycle, I think it helps to track and identify the gaps to improve the implementation and to achieve the project goal.
Okay, okay, that's very, very, very true. So it helps us to make sure that we can check whether we are actually being able to achieve the project goal as it was intended. Remember, at the end of the day, it's very, very important to monitor and check whether results are being achieved. So thank you, Lizzie, for that. Moses Okure, you wanted to add a comment on that?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Stephen. My name is Moses Okure from Uganda. And my thoughts and comment on that is that monitoring is a critical aspect in the project cycle management because it helps us to ascertain whether the project is progressing according to the design and the plan of the set objectives and outputs and results. And in the process, it also helps us to identify the gaps or improve on the project design. Thank you. Over to you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Moses Okure. And I think all of you are giving some very valid comments on monitoring process. And I saw there was a lot of people who wanted to make a comment on that. No worry, I will give you some opportunity to make a comment in another area. So let's just, let me just emphasize why I'm saying monitoring is so important in the project cycle because every time you do monitoring, it should be able to allow you to determine three things. There are three things that are very, very critical determine every time you want to do monitoring. So number one is actually to be able to check whether we are implementing the project as planned. That really becomes important to make sure that we are able to check on that. And again, also, it is also important to check whether we are achieving the planned results as expected and whether there are adjustments that actually need to be made to the project. And I think a couple of you have been able to speak about that specifically. And we normally look at monitoring as occurring in two major levels. That is, we are either doing results monitoring or we are actually doing implementation monitoring. And so when you do results monitoring, then we are actually basically monitoring the outputs and the outcomes and impact of the project. Whereas when you do implementation monitoring, then we'll be looking at the inputs, at the activities, and the outputs for the project. So those are some of the things that we actually need to be able to look at. And so implementation monitoring basically looks at inputs, activities, whereas results monitoring basically looks at outputs, outcomes, and impacts as expected. So it's very, very important to make sure that we are able to see that. So basically, it's either we are doing result monitoring, or it's also either we are doing implementation monitoring, or we are also doing just what we call situation monitoring, which is contextual monitoring, just looking at what is happening, not just in the project, but also around the project. And that's why we talk about those three types of monitoring that we actually need to be able to do. Now, let me move this discussion further. And I just want to be able to look at the whole issue of indicators. And first, basically, sometimes have a lot of confusion when you're trying to look at the different indicators that we will always be able to have out there, be it whether they are process indicators, whether they are output indicators, are they outcome indicators or impact indicators. It's always good so that we have a very good way of being able to identify the outcome indicators as much as possible. So it's good to make sure that we are able to identify that as much as possible. And it's very, very important to make sure that we can be able to do that. So just before I discuss that, let me just talk about what is an indicator. And so we normally say an indicator is simply a variable that is variable. Basically means that it is simply a component that has its value changing, and that's why we talk about indicators as variable. And these variables will be able to measure the key aspects or the key elements of a program or a project, such as activities, outputs, outcomes, and impacts. And so it's very, very important to make sure that we are able to look at some of those variables as much as possible so that we can measure what are some of the key aspects or elements of a program or project. The purpose of indicators as well is typically to be able to show whether the program or project aspects or elements were actually carried out as planned, or whether we can be able to show if a program or project was able to cause a change or a difference in a project. And that really becomes very, very important to be able to see that. And one of the things that we need also to be able to note about an indicator is the fact that indicators are reasonably expected to be able to vary. And that's something that we actually find a lot with a lot of indicators. And their values will always change from a given or a certain baseline level at the project start, and to another value at the project end. And then the indicator will actually be measured or calculated again. And that really becomes very, very important to make sure that we are able to understand. But first of all, let's look at the different types that are there for indicators. And the first thing, I just want to be able to compare process indicators with output indicators. It's good to make sure that we can actually be able to see the difference between the process indicators and also the output indicators. And when we talk about process indicators, these are basically indicators that will actually be able to measure whether the planned activities for an intervention actually if they took place. So sometimes we just want to be able to find out, did we undertake the activities as we had planned? So it's important to make sure that we are able to establish that as much as possible. So ensuring that we can be able to look at whether the indicators were able to actually take place as expected. And some very good examples is ensuring that we can actually be able to hold meetings, we can actually be able to conduct training courses. We can also ensure that we are able to distribute medicines, and again also ensuring that we are able to ensure there is development and testing of health education materials. That really becomes very, very important to make sure that we can actually be able to undertake some of the critical checking on the indicators of whether these activities were able to take place. So that those becomes some of the very, very important examples that we can have. And then when we are talking about output indicators, here we are simply just trying to refer to the indicators that basically add more values in relation to the product of the activity, or rather, this is what we call the output of the activity. So when we go to the output indicators, we take it a notch higher. So we don't want just to know that meetings were held, that there were some training courses conducted, or there was distribution of medicines, or there was development and testing of health education materials. But really, when you talk about output indicators, we want to know in terms of what was the product of the activity, or what was the output of the activity. And a very good example of some of these indicators will simply be able to talk about the number of health providers that are actually trained in case management. That really becomes very, very important. And also the number and the type of radio broadcasts that are actually produced, and also the number of medical assistants that are trained in case management, and also the number of healthcare providers that basically have an improved knowledge and skills in case management as expected. So it's always good to make sure that we are able to have some of those things in place. So ensuring that there are some healthcare providers that have actually been trained in case management, the number or type of radio broadcasts that were produced, the number of medical assistants that are trained in case management, very good example, or the number of healthcare providers that were provided with improved knowledge and skills in case management as well. Now, the other thing also that also becomes important is being able to differentiate the outcome indicators and also the impact indicators, which really becomes another critical differentiation that we actually also need to be able to make. And for outcome indicators, they basically try to measure more specifically to the results or to the outcomes of an intervention. And earlier on, I think we were able to define an outcome as one of the critical results levels for monitoring and evaluation. And so these are basically indicators that basically measure the outcomes or the results of an intervention. In fact, a lot of people also refer to outcome indicators as also results indicators, because when you talk about results indicators, we have two types of results indicators, the outcome indicators and the impact indicators. And so these indicators will basically be able to refer to the reason for conducting certain interventions in the first place. And they are the result of both the quantity and also the result of the quantity and also the quality of how well of the activities was implemented in the interventions as much as possible. So it's very, very important to make sure that we are able to consider outcome indicators as much as possible of how well the activities were actually implemented. And so it's very, very important to be able to look at that. And a very good example of outcome indicators is this example that we have here, like the proportion of sick children that are correctly managed by trained healthcare providers who would want to be able to ensure that we are able to see. So we trained some healthcare providers, and we were able to see maybe the outcome indicators for that was the number of trained healthcare providers. But now when you look at the outcome, we want to see these trained healthcare providers, how many children have they been able to correctly manage since the training. And then again, also we have impact indicators. That is basically these refer to the change status of the target population. And good examples here will be, you've heard about child mortality rates. If there's reduction in child mortality rate, if there's reduction in child morbidity, if there's improved child nutritional status, etc. These are some of the good examples of indicators that will actually be able to measure the impact or the change status of the target population based on the intervention that was actually provided. So it's very, very important to make sure that we are able to look at that as much as possible. So it's always good to make sure that we can identify those different types of indicators and clearly be able to use them in some of our projects. Now, the next thing we want to be able to look at is just to be able to look at the M&E framework. And a lot of the times, a lot of people confuse the M&E framework and the M&E plan. And I want to be able to bring the difference between the two, because they are quite different, because frameworks are basically an element of an M&E plan. So you can see that difference, that an M&E framework is taken from an M&E plan. So you need to be able to sorry, I think you lost me at some point. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I think I had a fluctuation, but I think you can hear me well now. And I'm just going to proceed. What I was saying is that I think it's very, very cold where I am. So I don't know whether internet is also feeling cold. So that's why I actually got lost at some point. So I was saying that sometimes also there are very, very critical elements of M&E plan that actually depict the project components and also the sequence of steps that are actually needed to be able to achieve the desired project results. And M&E frameworks will normally be able to help us increase the understanding of the project or the program goals and objectives. Then again, also, it helps us to be able to delineate the internal and the external elements that could actually be able to affect the project or program success as much as possible. And then again, also, it also becomes crucial for ensuring that we are able to understand and also analyze how a project or program is supposed to be able to work. Then the models or the tables or the pictures are what M&E frameworks are captured. So a lot of the times when people are actually wanting to be able to capture an M&E framework, they will actually be able to capture the M&E framework in a model or in a table or in a picture or in a map, just to make sure that they can visualize the factors that drive an intervention, as well as ensure that we can illustrate how a project is able to work. So there are different ways for capturing M&E frameworks. There's what people use as conceptual framework, and this is normally used a lot in research, conceptual framework. Then there is also what we call results framework. So you can also be able to capture your M&E frameworks in a results framework, in a logical framework as well. And a lot of the times people in M&E normally use the last two, the results framework or the logical framework. And we'll be getting into the logical framework in a bit, but let me just show you how a results framework. So what you're seeing there is what is a good example of a results framework, where you're able to indicate the the results that you have for your project, the indicator, then the indicator definition, then you're able to have your baseline, the baseline indicator, your target indicator. You're able to indicate the data sources where you will get the data to measure those indicators. What will be the frequency of your data collection? Who will be responsible to be able to measure that, and how you're going to be able to do your reporting. That really becomes very, very important to be able to capture in an M&E framework as much as possible. So it's important to make sure that we can be able to understand that very, very well. So I think that's good to be able to mention that. And I think I'm going to be able to pick your comments, your questions or comments on that towards the end. Let me just look at a couple of things. So please make sure, just note your question. I'm going to address all questions at the comments section, and just to make sure that I'm able to address your questions very, very clearly. Now, also, when it comes to the M&E plan, it is also good to make sure that we understand that. And as you can see, an M&E plan is not a model, it's not a table, it's not a picture that captures the key results of a project and how those results will actually be obtained in terms of how you will be able to measure their indicators. But really, an M&E plan is a document that basically captures the strategic information about your project and program, and how your project or program will be able to gather and use it for decision making that will actually be able to lead your project or program to improvement. And that's basically what we normally have when you talk about an M&E plan. So it's a fundamental document that basically holds the program accountable and basically tells you whether the project will actually be able to succeed or not. So it becomes very, very important to be able to work with an M&E plan. So it basically describes in detail how and when of a project or program monitoring and evaluation. In other words, if I want to know about how monitoring and evaluation is done in your project, then I will be able to reference that from the M&E document or the M&E plan. And this is basically what will be able to capture that. And so it's a very primary tool when it comes to M&E planning, because when we are doing planning, then we capture the planning components of the M&E in the M&E plan. And this can be done in different formats depending on the organization. However, it should actually be able to address key components like how are the indicators defined, who will actually be responsible for M&E activities, and who will actually be able to use the M&E activities, and how the M&E activities will actually be able to take place, and also how will that data be analyzed as much as possible. So it's always good to make sure that we are able to see the difference between the M&E framework and also the M&E plan as much as possible. So some of those differences really become quite critical for us to be able to see some of those differences, because sometimes there appears to have for us to be able to have a lot of difference in terms of how people simply understand the different terminologies that are there when it comes to looking at some of those critical items that we actually need to be able to see in terms of the difference between the M&E framework and also the M&E plan as much as possible. So it becomes very important to make sure that we can actually be able to see the importance of some of those things as much as possible. Now, I just want to move a little bit further and look at the logical framework, which is something that we are able to use a couple of times in a project. We will always be able to ensure that we are able to use a logical framework matrix a lot of the times, and I just want to be able to see if I can be able to share a few things about the logical framework matrix so that we can ensure that we are able to understand the logical framework matrix. So let's just talk about this. And so the logical framework matrix is, as you know, it is normally, and I'll show you an example of that, is normally a 4 by 4 matrix. That is, it has 4 columns and 4 rows. And in one of the rows, we will actually be able to capture what is the goal or impact of the project. And we already spoke about that. I was able to define to you what is an impact or a goal when I was talking about the results levels. And simply, this should be able to address why the project is actually doing what it's supposed to be able to do. And down there, again, you will be able to capture the outcomes. That is simply what are some of the results that you expect. And we said outcomes are basically the intermediate or the short-term results that you expect to be able to achieve, whereas the impact is the long-term goals that we expect to be able to achieve. And then the outputs will simply refer to the immediate deliverables or the immediate results that you actually need to be able to achieve. And then when you talk about the activities, you're talking about what you will need to be able to do so that you can deliver the outputs. And that's also something that we capture in the log frame. So the first 4 rows of a log frame matrix will basically be able to have the goal, the outcome, the output, and the activities. And that's what will be captured. But then again, we also have a column that also captures what will be the indicators of achievement. So what will tell you that the impact has been achieved, what will tell you that outcome has been achieved, and also what will tell you that the output has been achieved, and also what will tell you that the activities have actually been achieved for the project. And then again, after that, you're able to capture the means of verification. That is, how are you going to be able to check your reported results? And that's what we mean when you talk about the means of verification. And then lastly, the other thing that becomes important for you to capture is the risks and assumptions. That is, what assumptions basically underlie the structure of the project, and what will be the risk if they will not be able to prevail. So the assumptions and the risks that actually underlie the project also are also captured in this particular column as much as possible. So it's very, very important to achieve that. Just a minute. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, that it is also very, very important to make sure that we can actually be able to understand what are some of the risks and assumptions that underlie the achievement of the impacts, the achievement of the outcomes, the achievement of the outputs, and also the achievement of the activities that we have actually been able to put in place. And that really becomes very, very important. And it's based on that now you are able to put that in the log frame so that you get something like this. So you're able to put it in a log frame. And you can see this is a good example where you have a project that was actually looking at improving the health of under 5, specifically among low-income families who live by a particular river. And some of the outcomes that they were actually looking to achieve is the reduced volume of fecal wastage that is discharged into the river. And also the outputs were looking at the quality latrines constructed, being used by the community members, and several activities that they were actually having, like delivering public sanitation awareness campaign, mobilizing communities, preparing engineering specifications, and they are able to feel what are the indicators of achievement for that, what are some of the, what will be some of the data sources for basically getting information for these indicators, and basically what will be the risk and assumptions that will actually be there. And you're able to fill that, and we'll be sharing this in your notes so that you can basically be able to explore this logical framework further and make sure it's very, very clear. So let me just get into the last second last thing that we wanted also to discuss, and just mention some key points when that become very, very important when you want to be able to report effectively in an M&E report. And some of those key elements that really become very, very important is that it is always good to make sure that your evaluation report is able to take care of some 3 key elements. Even though I will be able to give you like 5, but there are 3 key ones that are very, very important. It is always good to make sure that your M&E report is able to report results effectively. It's always good because everybody picking an M&E report, you want to actually be able to see the results of your project. And so it's important that you're able to give us the status of your indicators and how they have actually been able to change from the baseline. That's something that becomes very, very important. And so it's also not important just to just give reporting results and fail to give the analysis. So the next important thing is being able to analyze your report results. That also becomes another critical thing that it is important for us to be able to do. So the analysis of the report result also becomes important. And the analysis part builds on the results that have been achieved and also describes how the results and improvements of the indicators were achieved with a focus on the work or the main or actually improvement in the indicators have been achieved with a focus on the work of the main implementing partners. Did you have the government? Do you have the civil society organizations involved? It is important to show us how they actually contributed to the achievement of those results as much as possible. And this analysis section will be able to tell us what are some of the shortfalls, difficulties that were encountered as you're implementing and as you're achieving the results, the lessons learned, and how this will be applied in future projects. So analysis of the results really becomes a very, very critical to create a very good story from the report. And it basically helps us to be able to portray the achievement that the project has actually been able to make. And then again, another thing is also good to be able to show us how the organization has been able to contribute to the results. This really becomes important if we can actually be able to see specifically. And the issue of contribution is critical because could be we have achieved results, but they were contributed by other implementing partners. But can we be able to see that this organization that is actually reporting about this particular project, how have they been able to achieve or contribute to these results that we are actually able to see from the project? Then again, also other components that are important is ensuring that you understand the report recipient needs. That really becomes important to make sure that you can actually be able to understand the reporting recipient needs, making sure that you bear in mind the recipient of the report and how they will actually be able to use that. In most cases, we present our M&E reports to our donors, and so the donors will be the report recipients. So we need to make sure that we actually extract the most information, the most important information that they will actually be able to need for their own work as much as possible. And then lastly, it's always good to make sure that we follow reporting instructions. Reporting instructions could be the format of the report. And it is always good to make sure that we can always be able to bear that as much as possible. So in case there is uncertainty on the content to be provided in the report or the format for a particular report, then it is important to make sure that we request that information from the donor or stakeholders, and if appropriate, also from the party that is directly requesting some of these reports that we actually share. So anytime you focus on some of those key elements, then you will actually be able to do very, very effective reporting as much as possible. So now the last thing that we want to be able to focus on is on how to be able to communicate the M&E findings for action and accountability. So there's we are supposed to make sure that we can communicate M&E findings to ensure there is action and accountability. And one of the best ways to be able to communicate M&E findings is to always have what we call a meal communications plan. And a meal communication plan is very, very critical. And a meal communication plan will be able to have certain critical components that we actually need to be able to have. And I just want to be able to show you some of those components. So the 4 critical components that we actually need when we are having an M&E or a meal communication plan. And one of the things is to make sure that we identify who are the target stakeholders who will actually be able to receive our meal communication. So it's very, very important to be able to consider that. Then again, it's also important to ensure that we look at the information needs. That is, what does each audience need to be able to know? Good communication normally requires an understanding of the stakeholder and their information needs as much as possible. Then thirdly is the issue of communication methods. That is, what are some of the most effective communication methods? What are some of the literacy levels that we actually need for the stakeholders? And of course, also how broad is the audience that we are trying to reach, so that we can determine what is the best communication method for some of these diverse audiences that we'll actually have. Because sometimes you will be sharing your M&E report, maybe with the donor. Also, you may want to also share the findings of that evaluation with the community. So it's always good to look at what are the ways to be able to communicate to different audiences that you need to share your M&E findings. Then also the issue of timing and frequency is also important. This you're trying to look at, is this the right timing? Is this the correct frequency to communicate effectively, so that you can ensure that you are able to communicate as sufficiently as possible. And I have also added just a case example of an M&E communication plan that is for a sample project. Basically, you can see it's able to identify the target stakeholders that you will have. That is the donor, the technical office, the Ministry of Health, project team, and the implementing partners, the beneficiaries for this project. In particular, there were IDPs, that is internally displaced persons, and also host community members for some of these IDPs. And you can see the information needs is clearly stipulated. the communication methods is clearly indicated, and also the timing and frequency to be able to communicate with them is also clearly indicated. So we'll be able to share with you this table in the notes that you're going to receive about what we have been able to present for today. For now, I think let's get now to this session where we pick some of your feedback and questions that you may have. So I think we can be able to look at that because we have been able to address most of the questions that most of the areas that we were supposed to cover as part of our agenda as much as possible. So let me just be able to pick some of your feedback, some of your session. And just before I ask you to make a comment or to ask a question, let me just address a question that was raised by Thu. And I'm not very sure. Let me just check. I don't know whether Thu is still connected. I think I was having a question, but then again, I think he may have disconnected. I can't be able to see that, but he had asked about evaluation standards and why it is important. Remember, monitoring and evaluation is normally conducted for the purposes of addressing certain objectives for a project program. And it is always good to make sure that we basically, the reason why we have some of these evaluation standards is to make sure that we have across the board, we have very clear-cut standards on how we need to make sure that we undertake evaluations for development projects. And this is why the DAC evaluation, DAC criteria becomes important. That's the Development Assistance Committee that is normally hosted by the OECD, which is an organization basically for looking at how development funding is actually channeled and whether there are ways to ensure that we are able to evaluate the success of that kind of funding. So it's important to make sure that we always ensure that those standards are always implemented in an evaluation. Just to respond to who was trying to ask that. But for now, I think let me ask a few people to make sure that they are able to give us their feedback and their questions. And I think let me start with Ali Mohammed here from my participant list. And Ali Mohammed, you can go right ahead.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please proceed, Ali.
Thank you very much for the informative presentation. I've just joined later. Mine is regarding the M&E plan and where this plan could be feed into the overall integrated management plan.
Okay. So yeah, so M&E plan is always important because we normally say that also monitoring and evaluation has a cycle, and we normally start a cycle of M&E when we're initiating the project. As we do planning, we also do mill planning, and that is where we have we capture what is important to be able to plan for in terms of monitoring and evaluation, and this is actually captured in the mill plan, and that is why when you look at the integrated plan for the project, one of the critical components that we will always have there is for the M&E plan or the mill plan, and if you don't do that, then you really have problems monitoring and evaluating a project. That's why we always say one of the critical components for planning is to make sure that as much as you will do your implementation plan, you will also do your financial plan. it is also important to make sure that your M&E plan is always there. And that's why we always say it's always good to have that M&E plan document to make sure that this also can integrate into your overall project plan as well. So I hope I'm clear, Ali.
Yes, thank you very much. It's very clear. Another just request, if possible, to send us a copy from this presentation. We will be very appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I think that's something that will be shared, and I'm sure Irene will be organizing to make sure that this presentation is shared to everybody who was able to participate in this particular session. So that will be done. Let me also be able to hear a comment also from Abdirahim. Abdirahim, are you there? Okay, I think I can be able to get Abdirahim to speak. Victor Okombo, are you there? Are you able to speak? Your hand is up. So let's see who comes up first between Abdirahim and Victor Okombo. I see. I can see your hand is lifted up. Are you able to?
Hello.
Yeah,
hello,
good. Victor, you can start.
Mr. Muchai, thank you. I've been trying to unmute myself. I think it is admin rights that you are still giving out.
Okay.
First of all, I just want to thank you so much for that elaborate presentation and for coming up with this presentation. So mine is just but to thank you for organizing this and making it a success. Another is just to share what my colleague has said. My request is that maybe you can plan and share with the whole team so that we can always refer, because the sessions that I missed, I had put a lot of attending this session, but I realized it had started. Otherwise, for the sessions I've been able to attend, it has been good. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Victor, and great to be able to know that you've actually been able to appreciate. And no worry, because for the sessions that you missed, we are basically going to be able to share the presentation handout so that you can basically refer from what you missed. And in case you can always be able to reach out for any clarification that you may be able to have. I think also, let me also get to hear from Eric. I can see Eric Nyamwaro. Eric Nyamwaro is also having their hand raised. So Eric, you can go ahead.
Yes. Thank you very much. Really very interesting conversations going on, and I do appreciate you taking the bold step and starting this conversation. And I think from the attendance, it shows it's an area of great interest, and we look forward to much more sessions in the coming days. Mine is a reflection on the aspect of the competencies of an M&D expert, manager, officer, vis-a-vis the competencies or skills of a project manager. I've been privy to lead an organizations whereby when it comes to recruitment, you'll find that you'll employ a project manager, for example, an M&E manager, and then when it comes to work, you'll find that there are very areas of collaboration. So I'm just really wondering, as we move, seeing the shifts happening, are you a better M&E person when you are a competent project manager? Or another way, are you a competent project manager when you have M&E skills? And as we move forward, are these two distinct careers, will they be merged into one, or will still keep the two parallels? It's just something I thought I put out there for participants to think about and explore, because as budgets come less in organizations, then when you are an M&D and have project management, or the other way around, then you are able to address the issues within an organization effectively. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Eric, for that. And yeah, there's been a great discussion about that. There's been a lot of discussion about whether what is important. Is it project management? Is it monitoring and evaluation? But I think, first of all, let's just say that, of course, M&E is a specialty area, but just taken into project management, because project management is the overall management of a project, and inside of that, then we have the specific component for M&E, and it's a specialty area, and that's why we will say that the competencies for an M&E professional will always be different from those ones of a project manager or a project officer, for that matter, because we know that there is much more. Specification of focus that we take into M&E, and that is why a project manager might not be able to perform effectively the role of an M&E officer, because when it comes to M&E, we tend to specifically become very specific and not broad, as a project manager would be in terms of matters to be M&E. We get to have a lot of specificity, because we want to be able to narrow down to basically, can we be able to ensure that we are able to look at the results of the project, and how do we measure the results of the project, and basically how do you also report and also ensure that the distribution of this M&E information happens in a very, very specific way. And that's why you will find now for M&E officers, we will be able to require skills such as data analysis skills, because there's a lot of data collection that has to be collected. There's a lot of needs for analyzing that data. When it comes to analyzing of data, then it's also complex, because there is the quantitative and the qualitative analysis that we have to do. If you take quantitative analysis, it has basic statistics, advanced statistics that we have to be able to do. And that is why the specific role of an M&E officer really becomes very, very critical in a project. So those roles will be different. But if you ask me, one of the things I will always recommend is that if you can play the role of a project manager before you specialize into M&E, I think it gives you a very good understanding and also makes you a very good M&E professional. And so if you ask me, the best way to start, maybe start as a project officer, and maybe specialize into M&E. It works out very well and gives you a very good background of understanding how to be able even to capture project results. But these two roles will be very, very different, and they serve different purposes altogether, and we will not be able to match them together. Each of them is beneficial and unique in its own way. So that's basically what I can say, Eric Nyamoro, and it is there's a lot of literature there that has been written about the competencies of project managers, the competencies of an M&E professional, and you will always find that all those competencies really become very, very different for you to be able to look at. So I think basically, I think that's what I can say for now, and I hope I have addressed your question, Eric Nyamwaro. So let me also pick a comment from Precious. There's Precious here, Precious Kim. If you can be able, Precious or Kim, if you can be able to make your comment or question. I hope you will be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, Precious from Nigeria. Thank you very much. It's really an insightful teaching. And I've been in the program area for some time. So MI is something I'm trying to pick interest in, so I'm just trying to dive into it. But I see that a lot of things that are here are things I'll be doing in programs, but not as an M&E person. So my question is, you talked about monitoring being an internal thing, and then evaluation being for external person. So I want to know, can one be a monitoring officer and also an evaluating officer? That's the first question. Then the second question, I also want you to expatiate on the difference between project, program, and portfolio. Then my third question is the major role of a project manager and a program manager. It's confusing. Sometimes they say you're a project manager, you're a program manager, so it's confusing, Okay. Then the fourth question would be, we talked about results monitoring and implementation monitoring. So can an organization be doing both? You say you can do either result monitoring or implementation monitoring. So those are my 4 questions. Thank you.
Okay.
I hope you got everything.
Yeah. So it's good. I think I've noted some of those 4 questions that you're asking, and I want to respond. So first, I think it's very, very good to be able to understand what is said for monitoring. Of course, we will have, we might not have just a monitoring officer and an evaluation officer. So we'll basically be able to have a monitoring and evaluation officer. But what we're saying is that the process of monitoring is better conducted inside the organization, because it involves a lot of collection of assessment data for how the project is continuing. And that is why sometimes we say we may not be able to contract an external person to be able to do our monitoring, because that's something that we expect to be capturing as the project happens. But when it comes to evaluation, why it's normally, it doesn't mean that it can be done internally, but rather why it is recommended it's done externally is for objectivity, because we don't want the evaluation to be subjective. That is to be for us to actually determine that the project has actually been successful. That's why we normally want an independent evaluator, and that's why most donors will always recommend that when it comes to doing an evaluation, you contract an independent evaluator to help you be able to evaluate that. So that's the reason. That's why we talked about monitoring being done internally and evaluation being done externally for objectivity. Because we, at the evaluation level, we want to confirm whether the project has actually been successful. Then just to come to your other question regarding the difference between project, program, and portfolio, I think we were able to spend some time on this. We say that a project will be that one particular intervention that you're doing that has some predefined goals or objectives that you want to be able to achieve, and that will be a time-based endeavor or a time-based intervention that we say we are running this project maybe for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on that. And then a program will basically be a collection of related projects. So you look at different projects and then you're able to cluster them as a program. And then you look at other projects and then you're able also to cluster them as a program. And then again, now a portfolio looks into a group of related programs. So out of all those programs that you created, then you're also able to create portfolios that allow you to make sure that you can actually achieve the strategic objective of the organization. And that's normally the 3 hierarchies. That's why we have projects at the lower level, program at the middle level, and the top level we have portfolios. And this also brings in the difference between the project manager and the program manager, as you asked in your third question, where we see that a project manager is actually in charge of a project. And we also have now a program manager being in charge of programs. And that's basically the difference between the two. So you can be a program manager and you're just in charge of a project. If you're a program manager, then you're in charge of a program. That means there are several projects that are under your docket. But if you're a project manager, then you are in charge of a particular project at a particular time. Then your last question in terms of implementation monitoring and results monitoring. We mentioned this because we said monitoring is a very important process in the project cycle. And when you talk about implementation monitoring, we said here we are interested in just taking that the activities and the outputs of the projects are being achieved. Whereas now, when you want to look at the results monitoring, then you're trying to check, are we moving progressively in terms of achieving our outcomes and our impacts as well. So that becomes very, very important to be able to observe at the results monitoring. So we say when you look at monitoring, look at it in that, because a lot of the times people just think monitoring is about monitoring the activities and outputs, but they forget about the bit for result monitoring. So one of the things, critical things that we should always do when you're doing monitoring is also to monitor the results as well. So it's important to make sure that we have a good understanding of that. And I think that addresses the questions that you basically asked, Precious, on those 4 questions. I think I've been clear on that. And maybe I can also ask someone else to be able to ask a comment or a question. And that is, we can move on to Sandra. Sandra, if you're there. And as Sandra opens their microphone, Irene, I hope I got time. How many more comments do you think I can pick, Irene? If you can advise me. Irene, can you hear me?
Hi, Stephen.
Yeah.
I think we can take 3 more questions before we wind up.
Okay. So let me just pick 3 more comments or questions. And so I had asked Sandra, I think we can be able to get Sandra. And I think I'm just going to move to Rosalind Gekonyo. Rosalind Gekonyo, if you're there, if you can be able to make your comment or question. Still, I can get Rosalind. I don't know. Is it possible, Irene, if you can try to, the host can try to unmute them so that they can make their comments. I think their hands are up, but their microphones. Yes, I think now we have Rosalind Gekonyo. Yeah, Rosalind Gekonyo, you can go ahead and make your comment or question.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. So my question was about the input and output indicators. I didn't hear you mention that, and I wanted to get an insight on that. I've heard it often mentioned before, but it's not very clear to me. So where would you place the input and the output indicators in the MNU? Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I think it just goes with the school of thoughts because yes, you will go out there and you will hear some people bringing in the input indicators, but we don't majorly address that because really when you look at inputs, they are not results levels. And so really, these are basically things that you need to make sure that you have. So we do not really put indicators to check on our inputs. And that is why we mainly talk about output indicators, because our interest with indicators, indicators help us to track the results. So inputs basically the resources that we will actually be able to have in an intervention. So, so it's just a school of thought that you will find that in that school of thought, they still add input indicators together with output indicators. But that's, I can assure you, that school of thought is not popular and is not something that we also find as recommended by DAC to go the input indicators way. So we mainly just talk about process indicators, output indicators, outcome indicators, and also impact indicators. So you'll not find a lot, but of course, in this field of knowledge, you will always find people trying to introduce input indicators, but I will assure you they will not hold a lot of weight in M&E. So it's just a classification that somebody puts there, but it's not popular. It's not also something that we find recommended by DAC as well in terms of indicators. So it's not a very authenticated indicator to be able to use for measuring your results. So that's what I can say for now, Rosalind, and I hope I've been able to respond to your question. I think also we can be able to move ahead and also pick another second question or comment. And I think let me be able to hear Egwatu Onejelem. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, but we can hear your comment or question as well. I don't know whether you're able to unmute or the host can help you be able to unmute so that you can be able to be heard. We are not able to get Egwatu. We can not be able to hear you until now.
Stephen.
Your hand is raised. Yeah.
What's the name? Olajalem, any other name?
Egwatu. I think
okay.
I hope I'm
all right.
Yeah.
Hello.
Good. Yeah. Please
Hello.
go ahead. Egwatu Onyejelem.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Good day, everyone. I would like to thank you for this seminar. It's bringing up some ideas that are beneficial, would be beneficial to me. I was wondering if you had it before and how often you might be having it subsequently. Then okay. I would like to know, how exactly would you classify an M&E team? Would you put them together with researchers? Because in some sessions, I find it difficult to understand the views of people because M&E deals with a lot of data and it's all about primary data and analysis, primary research. So I don't know what global practice or standard that you have according to your own organization. What is the norm there?
Okay. So Egwatu, I think I've gotten your comments clearly, and also your question. One of the comments that you made is on how regular some of these sessions will be. And I think we are going to have that elaboration coming in later on from Irene So I think we will get to be able to understand how some of these sessions are scheduled in the future, and so that you can always be able to track them. But then on your second question on whether you can classify M&E teams as researchers, normally we need research skills sometimes in M&E, but really these are different skill sets altogether, because M&E team is more specifically interested in ensuring that a project is always able to achieve the results for which it was meant to be able to achieve. And this will be different from what researchers will actually be able to look at, because a lot of the times researchers are not just researching on projects, they are also researching on any phenomenon out there. It might not be projects, but basically if you look at M&E professionals, our interest is on projects or programs that are being run. So these two will actually be different, and that is why it is important to always treat them differently at all times as much as possible. So we know we utilize a lot of research skills when it comes to M&E, but basically researchers and M&E professionals will be different sets of professions altogether. So that's what I can say for now, and I hope that addresses your question. I think let me also try to pick someone else that I was trying to get to make their comment or question, and that was Sandra. And basically, hope that this time around you can be able to unmute your microphone. Sandra, you were having a question or comment that you wanted to make. Hope you're able to unmute your microphone now. Or maybe the host will help you unmute Sandra. Yeah, you're speaking, but I think your microphone is off. So just hold on a few minutes before the host can actually be able to unmute you.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. You're now unmuted. You can proceed now.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much for you providing us the opportunity and provides the amazing platform that we can learn all together regarding to M&E aspect, and as well as build our team to be a M&E practitioner. Otherwise, I would like to have a question regarding the coherence that what factor that will bring to identify the coherence during the analysis process. Yes, the question and the comment. If possible, the course should be provides more instruction regarding to the indicator criteria in each component, like health and sanitation and food security, other environment. There are a lot of indicator and its criteria. So I think that if possible, the course instructor should provide more clearly about the criteria of indicator and how to analyze in each indicator, because some indicator that have its criteria, like access safe water. So what's criteria to identify that the rural people access the safe water or clean water? Another indicator like food security, what factor, what the criteria that identify that the rural people have enough food security. Okay, take these opportunities. I would like to thank for the Strategy Netherlands that provide me the opportunity to join this session as well. Okay, thank you very much. Thank.
Okay. Yeah, so San, I think we've gotten your question very well. And I think one of the things to be able to clarify, I think you asked about coherence. And coherence has become a critical evaluation criteria that nowadays, if you're doing evaluation, then you have to be able to show us how your intervention, because a lot of the times we were just focusing on looking at how a program is actually able to fulfill the criteria that relates themselves with just the current project that you're actually doing. But now things have actually been mandated for us to be able to make sure that we also relate specifically what the project is actually able to do. And so that is why the issue of coherence has become important, where we need to make sure that we want to check at this intervention with other actors in the same context that it is actually able to do. So we want to see if you're working for World Vision, and you have implemented a food security project, we want to see how is that intervention relating with other actors in the same context. And that's why coherence really becomes very, very important. Then again, also, as you rightly say, it is important also to look at how these evaluation criteria deals with different sectoral specializations that would be there. You mentioned food security, WASH, be it resilience areas or livelihood projects. And you want to be able to understand also their specific indicators also to be able to measure those sectorial specializations. And I think most of the times when you go into those specific sectors, then you will be able to find that there are specific indicators that can be sufficient. But what that criteria has done is that for the 6 mandatory evaluation criteria, regardless of whether you are doing a food security project, or you're doing a nutrition project, or you're doing a health project, or you're doing a WASH project, then it is important to make sure that you're able to tell us how that project is able to achieve these specific criteria. But now, when it comes to maybe something to do with the effectiveness of that particular project, or the impact of that particular project, then we know that the indicators will be different depending on the specialization for that particular project. So it still applies. So the criteria still apply regardless of the specialization, but we know there are specific indicators that you can actually use for the specialization for your project. And a lot of the times there's a lot of literature concerning the indicators for specific areas of specialization. Like when you talk about food security, there are indicators for that, and it's always good to make sure that you can reference from those. But the standard criteria are applicable for every specialization, regardless of whether you're dealing with food security. They will always be applicable. And I hope I have been very, very clear about that. So thank you so much for that. I think those are the 3 questions that I was asked by Irene to be able to take, and I can see there's still more. But what we will do is, why don't you just type your comment or question on the chat box, because this session is recorded, and we are able to see each of those comments and see if we can be able to respond to some of those comments or questions directly to you as we send you these materials as well. So For now, I think, and also for just ensuring that we keep within the timelines of this particular webinar, let me just hand over to Irene so that I don't consume more time than that. But thank you so much. I think this has been a very good session, and you guys have been able to really appreciate it, and also ask some very engaging questions. And we can always look forward to meet again in the next webinar as well. So Irene, please come in so that you can take us to the next part of the program.
Okay, thank you so much, Stephen. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, we are hearing you. We are hearing you, Irene. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It has been a very wonderful session, and I know we have all gained a lot. Remember, this was just an introduction. Remember, we have more in our courses. Kindly visit our website, that is capacityafrica.com and Strategia Netherlands. My colleague is coming on board to tell you, in case you're interested in our courses, how to register and how to learn more about us. So remember, this recording plus the slides are going to be shared. And also we always upload our sessions on our YouTube channel, that is Strategia Netherlands YouTube channel. Kindly visit our YouTube channel to get a hold of this recording, plus other recordings that we've had before with other courses. We have not only had monitoring and evaluation, we've had fundraising monitors, we've had project management, and so on. So kindly check on our YouTube channel, Strategia Netherlands YouTube channel. You're going to get hold of this recording and many more. So some of you are asking if we are going to give certificates for this training. Unfortunately, there are no certificates for this particular training, but if you're interested in studying with us, kindly let us know. Debbie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I hope this time I'll go beyond the greetings. Somehow my session was interrupted.
Yeah, sure.
I hope you can.
Yeah, we can hear you, Debbie.
Perfect. Thank you so much again for giving me this opportunity. I'm going to dive right into it because I don't want any interruptions. Thank you for your patience. Steve, thank you for that amazing session. I may have missed parts of it because of my internet, but it was amazing. And from the comments, I can see that it was such a good one. So without much ado, Strategia Netherlands is an international management training. We're an organization that provides capacity building services in development, safety and security, and in humanitarian interventions. And we are a global network, as you can see, there's people from all over the world, and this makes us who we are. We are legally registered and recognized as a management training organization in the Netherlands. And we have students from all over, and you're most welcome to apply. Our mission is to make development and humanitarian work more effective through developing and implementing high quality consultancy projects. We use innovative capacity building solutions, and we do quite a bit of work out there. Non-governmental organizations, CBOs, NGOs, international organizations, and we've trained a good number, over 400 people that already work in these institutions. Our courses, please note that all our courses are online. I get queries sometimes asking if we have courses where people can attend physically. No, all our online all our courses are online, and our courses are offered by a professional cohort of people who have hands-on experience. As I said before, we've trained over 400 international organization staff, UNICEF World Program, UNEP, Plan International, and the likes. Yeah, onto the next slide. Some of you know, some of you don't know, we have over 200 courses on offer. And another thing that we can do is we can also come up with courses for organizations as well. And if you actually are interested in a course and it's perhaps missing an important aspect that is part of your work, we can always include an additional module, and I think that's what makes us special, and that's why people keep coming back to us. So we have 3-month courses, 6-month course, and 12-month courses respectively. And those are certificate, diploma, and postgraduate diplomas, ranging from monitoring and evaluation, obviously, which is why we're here today, WASH, procurement, disaster management, finance management for NGOs, international development, leadership, gender, migration, and many, many others. So please spread the word as well to more people so that they can benefit from these courses. So our most popular courses, you would have guessed it, monitoring and evaluation, water, sanitation and hygiene, gender, agribusiness is a big one as well, nutrition, humanitarian diplomacy, and procurement and supply chain management. Now, how do you access these courses? So basically, you send an inquiry to info@strategianetherlands.nl, and we will send you a registration form, which you will need to complete and send back with your CV and academic certificates. These will then be reviewed by our academics panel, and upon being successful, you receive an admission offer letter and an invoice. You accept the offer, you send your proof of residence, you will then receive an email with your login credentials, and these you use to access the learning platform. You then test your login credentials, and just to ensure that you've got them right, if there's an issue, we sort out the issue. Usually this goes very smoothly, by the way. And the platform is your point of contact between your moderator, yourself, and your fellow students. Once you're successfully logged in, you will receive a couple of days later, or perhaps the next day, you will then receive a Zoom link from the online resources team for your orientation program. And this is where you basically orient yourself with the platform, how to use it, how to submit your assignment, how to request for one-on-one sessions and the like. So this is a very, very important aspect. And once you've done your orientation, then you begin your course. You've met your moderator at the orientation, and you're good to go. So what are the expectations? Basically, the learning platform has got all the manuals, the modules, the reference materials, audios, videos. These can be pre-downloaded if you're going to go out to the field, and you can access these from wherever, and it's very, very convenient. You can raise queries. Usually these are attended to quite continuously, and they need to be raised during working hours. We have monthly virtual coaching sessions. We expect you to submit monthly assignments, and you do a research paper if you undertake a diploma or postgraduate diploma. And it's important to know that you need to spend 5 to 6 hours per week. And it's also important to note that you can actually take more than one course. And we're very, very flexible with that. As long as you can handle it, these are self-paced courses. It depends on you. You've got all the support you need. So advantages of taking courses at Strategia Netherlands. A lot of our students have actually earned promotions at their workplace. They've advanced their career choices. They've changed their careers. They've secured better rewarding jobs, and they've just basically upskilled themselves. Our certificate courses, €400. Those last for 3 months. Diploma courses last for 6 months, and those go for €800. And our postgraduate diplomas, those are 12-month courses, and they last a 12-month period, sorry, and that costs 1,200 euros. Today, I would like to give you an offer. If you apply today, you will receive a 20% discount on your course fee. And please note that this offer is valid for today only. And remember also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Strategia Netherlands. This is where you can access past webinars, present and future webinars as well. You will be able to get notifications of our upcoming webinars. So that's really, really important. I do look forward to chatting with you over email. If you've got any more queries, please do not hesitate to send an email to info@strategianetherlands.nl. Thank you very, very much. Over to you, Irene.
Oh, thank you so much, Debbie. I think that is very clear to our participants. Kindly, if you can see the email on your screen, info@strategianetherlands.nl. That is the one you're supposed to use to inquire about our courses and find out more about any other course you might be interested in. So remember, like I said, we are going to upload this recording on the YouTube channel, Strategia Netherlands YouTube channel, and then you'll be able to access it from there. And I think we can also share the link with this presentation and the slides via your emails. We have your emails, the ones you used to register, so no need to worry. And thank you so much for joining us. It has been a very wonderful discussion, and we are looking forward to having you on board, joining us to study with us. So kindly visit strategianetherlands.com. That's the website for the school, and find out more about the courses. So remember, also the training was offered in partnership with capacityafrica.com. So you can also check out their courses online and just find out, get to learn more about their courses too. So thank you so much for joining us. I think at this juncture, we have all been patient, and I know we have other places to be. Thank you so much, and looking forward to having you again. And may God bless you and keep safe. Thank you so much. And from our end, it is bye-bye.
Did you know that 67% of Africans don't have access to proper housing, 56% have no access to water, and 79% have no access to food? These are the grim statistics of challenges facing Africa today, even as the continent works to develop. This development demands for well-trained personnel. At Capacity Africa Training Institute, we have been leading the charge in changing Africa's fortunes. We are the leading development training company in Africa, offering institutional training solutions and online and distance learning in business, development, and humanitarian courses. Over the last 10 years, we have trained over 10,000 staff from NGOs, governments, and the United Nations in Africa. Our catalog consists of over 200 career-focused online courses to choose from, and registration for diploma and postgraduate courses is now open for the following courses: Postgraduate Diploma in Monitoring and Evaluation, Postgraduate Diploma in Water, Sanitation and Hygiene, Diploma in Community Development, Postgraduate Diploma in Strategic Planning and Management, Postgraduate Diploma in Grants Management, Diploma in Project Management, Diploma in Nutrition and Dietetics, Diploma in Gender and Development, Diploma in Leadership and Management, Diploma in Finance Management for NGOs, and many more. We have also partnered with the European International University to offer an executive MBA. Once you register, you will have access to our team of experienced trainers and specialist consultants who will guide you on your course whenever you need them. The cost for diploma courses is $800, while postgraduate courses cost $1,200. The cost of a one-year MBA course is €1,500. visit www.capacityafrica.com for more information. Then, Strategia Netherlands. Are you interested in building a career in the development and humanitarian sector? Then, Strategia Netherlands is the best option for you. We offer training solutions to the United Nations, governments, NGOs, and other development organizations worldwide. Make your online application now for Diploma in Monitoring and Evaluation, Diploma in Grants Management, Diploma in Conflict Management, Diploma in Disaster Management, Diploma in Water, Sanitation and Hygiene, and many more. The cost for diploma courses is 800 euros, while postgraduate courses cost 1,200 euros. Visit www.strategianetherlands.nl for more information. Big investor and speaker. It's no secret that Africa is the next frontier, and you can be the next big investor. At Strategia Business School, we'll offer you a monthly masterclass that will help you build your network among respected entrepreneurs and business leaders and guide you on the opportunities available and how to mitigate any challenges of investing in Africa. Our African Business Club will also introduce you to our team of African business mentors and fellow investors, all tailored to your very own needs. Among the modules covered are doing business in Africa, raising investment and trade finance, importing from Africa and exporting to Africa, agribusiness opportunities in Africa, and understanding the African market. You can also register for online diploma business courses with a flexible learning schedule. Some of our courses include Diploma in Digital Marketing, Diploma in Sales and Marketing, Diploma in Finance Management, and Diploma in Logistics Management. Certificate courses run for 3 months, while diploma courses run for 6 months, and you can register at the beginning of every month. The cost for certificate courses is 500 euros, while diploma courses cost 800 euros. Take action and register today. For more information, contact info@strategiabusiness.com or visit www.strategiabusiness.com.